With nothing left to lose, everyone's experimenting with the business paradigm. How's this going to change the geek world? We'll talk about that today on today's episode of the Geek Watch podcast.
This is the Geek Watch podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petrie.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 107 of the Geek Watch podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me on the phone, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petrie.
Hi, Brian. How are you doing?
Oh, hanging in there. How about yourself?
Not bad. I'm currently in a parking lot, so that's fun and interesting.
Part of the joy of living in West Virginia is that you take signal where you can get it, basically. So... Oh, but so yeah, I've been keeping track of stuff that's going on. I mean, we're still getting some news geek-wise out there. There's little dribs and drabs of things that are happening. Of course, to all the geek watchers out there, most of the news that comes out, we're putting on the Geek Watch's Facebook page. So if you look for the Geek Watch podcast, or if you go to geekwatch.net, it'll direct you directly to the Facebook page. You know, you keep track of stuff that that's going on right now. Like I said, we're posting as much news as we can as things are coming out. But there was something I did want to talk to you about today, because, of course, now that everybody's pretty much at a standstill and staying at home, there have been, at least certainly in the geek world for sure, there's been a few experiments that have been going on as far as standard business models that we've been practicing for a while. Specifically, well, let me give you the first one that I've been following is the deal with DC Comics. I think you and I have talked before about Diamond Publishing, which is, basically was the main distributor for comic books. And that which was basically the devil you had to sell your soul to if you had a comic book shop or you wanted to sell comic books. Well, DC decided they didn't want to deal with Diamond anymore, so they stopped using Diamond. And they have now, they're going through like 2 or 3 distributors at this point, smaller distributors, and basically pulled everything out of Diamond, which... I don't know if they would have been willing to do that if it wasn't for the fact that right now, comic book shops aren't open. It's pretty much a low stakes game at this point to do this, because there's not there's not a lot of not a lot of comic book shops open, and so it's a good time to kind of experiment with new distributors. And of course, it hasn't gone off without a hitch for sure. There have been some problems. Distributor-wise, but they're ironing out the kinks on it. But, of course, at this point, when you have one of the 2 major comic book companies saying, well, we're not going to use Diamond anymore, and, of course, you and I have talked about before the issues Diamond is having, with, declaring bankruptcy and everything else. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be the nail in the coffin for Diamond distributors, but... I mean, as of right now, like I said, it's they're definitely struggling.
Though.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It certainly is a big deal. But the thing is, again, I'm looking at 52 days at this point that I've been quarantined here, and I think you've been quarantined like 52. I think 52 days, and no real end in sight.
Yeah.
So. And of course, some places are starting to open up a little bit, but I mean, here in West Virginia, they're basically saying they're starting to open up a few things, but should the cases grow past 3% of new cases appearing, then they're going to back off of everything again. So, we're not.
That's almost worse than if they had just stayed shut down. I mean, we for one thing, we have restaurants opening, but they're not doing like their own capacity, their normal capacity. So that's going to hurt them in a way, like, food prep. They're going to, unfreeze a certain amount of food, not knowing if it's enough, or if they get out too much, then they'll have to throw it away at the end of the day. So it's a crazy time, and there's no way to predict, how you'll do, because how many people are going to come out who's not afraid, how many servers, how many cooks do you need? That's just one business. I can't even picture what else is going on out there. It's going to be crazy.
Well, the thing about it is to my mind, we're in kind of a dangerous time at this point, because a lot of people are wanting this to be over. And of course, I get it. I mean, obviously I want this to be over too, but we're getting to a point now where people are getting fatigued, and they're just saying, I want this to be over. And, as someone who has studied fire eating, there's a saying for fire eaters that the two most dangerous times for fire eating, when you're doing fire eating, is when you first start out and you don't have a lot of experience, and then when you have a lot of experience and you get comfortable, and then you start getting careless.
Complacent. Yep.
Yeah, you get complacent, and then you can really hurt yourself. And honestly, between complacency and really, just flat out fatigue, people are going to be, I think people are going to be really careless, and, we might have
Ellen said that same thing about crocodile hunting. Don't grow complacent.
Yeah, don't grow complacent. The thing about it too is that, and you see a lot of the stuff online where people are saying, well, people said this was going to be bad, and things aren't as bad as people were saying. And it's like, but, the reason why things weren't bad is because we took steps, we
took the precautions that they suggested.
Yeah, it's people are looking at, well, the numbers aren't as high as they could have been, and it's like, well, that's because we were careful. It has nothing to do with the fact that we went overboard. It goes back to, survivor bias, and things could have been a lot worse, and things could get a lot worse. That's the thing about it. And so, I mean, we need to, in a real sense, stay the course, even though, again, I get it. I'm getting tired of all of this too. But we got to do what we got to do at this point. And, to be honest, it's not like things are going to go completely back to normal. They're just not.
Mm-mm.
And
no, we've talked about it on here before. Talked about the resurgence of the drive-in culture, and seeing that already. Churches and the like, and I foresee buffets. We're still going to have buffets, but there aren't going to be scoops and tongs anymore. Everything's going to be in its own individual, paper container that you can pick up and put on your plate.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a serious. Well, I mean, you're already seeing in grocery stores now that you have a plastic sneeze guard in front of the cashiers at this point.
Yes, it's very much like a toll booth or a bank teller now. Yep. It's this big sheet of plexiglass hanging between you, and down, you cash your card or your money through a slot in the bottom, and it's exactly that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, the big thing that we can talk about, and I've been really following this, talking about, changes, is Universal Pictures. Have you been following this about Universal?
Is it the release of the movies was so good that I'm not certain.
Well, about the Troll World Tour movie. It was supposed to come out about a month ago, and of course it wasn't going to be able to because of of course theaters are closed, and they decided, well, children's movies don't do very well in the fall and the winter, and so holding off on putting it out wasn't really going to help. In fact, it would probably hurt the movie. So instead of waiting until maybe next spring and hoping, they said, let's just go ahead and release it. Let's go ahead.
Download.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We go, so you can, through cable, you can buy it, and so they did that. And they were shocked that the movie made $100 million by going ahead and release it, being able to do a pay-per-view and that sort of thing and being able to watch it at home. And so Universal decided, well, this works so well, and we made $100 million. We should basically, from now on, when we release a movie, if there are theaters, we'll release it to theaters, but we'll also simultaneously release it pay-per-view. So we'll do both from now on. And Regal said, well, AMC, it was AMC. Regal followed suit and said the same thing afterwards. But AMC said, and they're the biggest, at this point, the biggest theater chain in America. They said, well, Universal, if you decide you're going to do simultaneous releases, we're not going to we're not going to put your movies out. And I see both sides of the argument. I mean, I see AMC's side to this because, if you got a choice of staying home and watching the movie or getting in your car and driving to the theater and paying for the tickets and paying for the popcorn and sitting in the seats and hoping that somebody else doesn't talk through the movie, I get that. Now, as a movie lover, I love the movie-going experience, but but the thing about it is I definitely see AMC's view on this is because, if they do put the movies out, people probably not going to go see them. They'll probably rather stay at home and watch it. So there's really...
Yeah, especially now. And then, in a few months, if, things do get better, people are going to have cabin fever and they're going to want to get out and go to the movie. But even still, if it's a movie that people want, they are still going to, order it and watch it. So it really, it depends on the film. So,
well, the thing about it is with AMC, that's going to be the issue because, like I said, AMC had, they had pull at one time. I mean, let's face it, Universal would never have considered doing a pay-per-view release at the same time they released it in the theaters. They would have never have done that, except for the fact the Trolls World Tour made a bunch of money, which, let's be honest, Universal is getting a bigger cut of that money, because they're basically putting it out. They're not having to give the theaters their cut. I mean, the pay-per-view companies, of course, they get a bit of a cut, but certainly not what movie theaters get.
And movie theaters also made money from concessions, so that was a big part of their revenue.
But I mean, the thing about it is, I certainly see why Universal would go this route, because the thing about it is, if you're depending on movie theaters, if something happens like, I don't know, a global, a global epidemic hits and people can't get out, now you've got a business model that works, and but like I said, I see both. I see both sides of it. But the fact that AMC is hurting right now and may not even be around, when this stuff, finally blows over and we can get out again, AMC, and we talked about this before, AMC is in a world of hurt right now, and there's no guarantee they'll even be around. And, movie companies, movie studios, they need to look at how they're going to be able to get their films out, because these things, one thing that Hollywood has, it's taken them forever, and they need to basically learn this lesson. I've been screaming this to the hills. A lot of movie fans have been screaming this to the hills. Hollywood, they need to figure this out now, especially now, is that movies don't necessarily have to be millions of dollars to be successful. They need to start looking at doing smaller budget films, good films, but films that don't, give films that don't require these massive budgets a chance to go, to be made. They just have this phobia. It's like, well, if it doesn't cost $50 million to make the film, it's not worth it's not worth trying to do it.
Not going to make that much money either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is there's a lot of successful films that, that were indie films. You look at Paranormal Activity. It didn't cost hardly anything to make that film.
Right.
But it was extremely successful. And the less money that it takes to make the film, the more money you get back. I mean, horror films, let's be honest, horror films don't really require that much money to be made.
No, once upon a time it was blood and boobs.
That was pretty much it. The two cheapest special effects you could come up with.
Yep, that was everything in horror movies.
Yeah, pretty much so. But I mean, that's the thing now is that with everything that's been going on, the world is definitely changing, and Hollywood. I think they're going to need to, like I said, step up to the plate and realize
change with it.
They have to exactly because I think this chasing the blockbuster has done a world of damage to Hollywood. Now, and don't get me wrong, I love a good blockbuster film. I love the Marvel superhero films. But you have to make room for some smaller films, I mean, that's where we get, like Quentin Tarantino films and, a lot of in the 90s when you had that resurgence of the smaller indie film. And, Hollywood has kind of drifted away from that. But, I think they really need to look at being able to, front for these like smaller indie films that are good movies but don't require these massive budgets, but they can still be successful. But yeah, I mean, the thing about it is until this stuff blows over, we don't know what movie going is going to look like. Because even when, if and when movie theaters open up again, you're still going to have like, 2 seats between everybody at this, and all of that. And you're going to still going to have social distancing. And that's really going to depend upon when people feel comfortable enough to go out and go to movies again. And that's, I don't think that there's going to be this big rush of people. I mean, it's like you said, people are getting stir crazy and they want to get out. But at the same time, people are going to be leery of it, I think. And
it's definitely going to be, our whole culture is going to be different. I'm looking forward to see what the next 2 years of Shark Tank come out with, because I think it's going to be a lot of, kind of confined space sort of things to bring forth. One thing I was thinking of, there's going to be a lot more urban homesteading. People, because the food industry is changing and everything, so a lot more people are going to be wanting to grow things at home. I was just thinking about this because, our garden's bigger this year. I'm growing mushrooms, something I've never done before. It's, kind of picking up. I'm trying to think of a good name to call it. I guess necessary hobbies or useful hobbies. I don't know what would be a good term for this.
Well, I'll give you a term for it. And for me to use this term, I'm going to have to acknowledge something that's that maybe I should be ashamed of at my age, but I have a TikTok account that's doing rather well. But yeah, I've been posting TikToks, but I've been following TikTok culture, and there is a type of TikTok where people are where they're planting gardens and they are doing crafts. And they are putting clotted cream and jam on homemade bread, and the term for this, and you can look it up so you can see these videos. It's called cottagecore. So there's a name for this.
It's very British.
Yes, there's certainly because there is sort of that. Dressing up in linens and, enjoying a tea and things like, and making crafts. Yeah, it's called cottagecore. I didn't know this was a thing, but it's a thing. And there are like a ton of these TikToks, and there's there's videos on YouTube of cottage core is what it's called, and
Wow.
yeah, it's. I didn't know this was a thing. Found out. I saw I saw a video of somebody referencing this, and I'm like, what the heck is cottage core? And I looked it up, and I'm like, this is, this is like Regency kind of, it's like a modern Regency type of thing, So you get these videos of young ladies, cutting up strawberries to put in their clotted cream, to eat and eat their cookies, baking cookies and breads and all that stuff. So, so yes, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing. So. But yeah, I mean, that's, at this point, everybody's coming up with hobbies, for sure. But yeah, I mean, in a real sense, just basically just trying to find ways of entertaining, keeping ourselves entertained. And of course, with we're very fortunate in the fact that, again, going back to streaming services, which we've talked about numerous times on the podcast. But having that, having those shows available, well, I mean, we look at AMC, for example. AMC, they're of course looking for content. They're still on hold for the season finale of The Walking Dead, but they're fortunate in the fact that they own Shudder, and because they own Shudder, of course, there's a lot of original programs that were on Shudder that they're moving over, like the Creep Show TV show.
Like Creep Show, I finally got to see the first episodes of the first two. I got to see that.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're bringing that, so they've got that content that repurposing. So people who don't have Shudder are getting to see some of this original content. Which gives AMC something that they can put on their television. I mean, backlog of content is king right now because you can't really make new stuff right now. You just can't. Right. And so, and we've talked about this before. People are getting the chance to really catch up on stuff that they haven't seen.
Never even heard of. Yeah, there's stuff I've gone back and got really excited about and realized, it only ran 2 seasons. And, because of that, we could get revivals of these series if enough, people get together and say, hey, this was really good. Why don't you finish it out, sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, and eventually, a lot of shows that, didn't get a chance before, perhaps they'll get a second chance. I mean, it's happened. It doesn't happen often. I mean, think about how many times Family Guy has been, resurrected from the dead. But
and Firefly
yeah, well, with Firefly, you had the movies, but that was about it. But yeah, I mean, talk about a show that didn't get a chance at all.
Right.
I mean, they didn't. When it first aired on television, they didn't even put the shows in order. That's how bad it was.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is, you're getting a lot of there are a lot of opportunities coming out now. With, like I said, people still trapped in their homes, but they're still being able to do things like Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
They did sort of that reunion thing in Parks and Rec. And the one thing that, of course, that I saw that I sent to you on Facebook, the little
Good Omens.
did for Good Omens, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And David Tennant's done several of those. He did one with Catherine Tate. They did sort of that, online schooling with a character she did on her
Lauren, yeah,
on the Catherine Tate show, yes. And that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about it, and for a lot of us that are really into YouTube and the DIY aesthetic of YouTube, because it's a little more, well, let's say I don't want to say it's lower quality, but the fact that that you have the whole the quality of the content's more important than it being an 8K resolution and things like that. That has
Mhm.
really given a lot of these other these bigger stations the impetus to say, well, we can put stuff out on YouTube and film it from people's homes, and it's going to be okay. We don't have to say, well, we can't get the quality good enough for people to watch it. People at this point have been watching these videos and going, they've been watching videos on YouTube. They're used to it. They just want the
Mhm.
content. If the content is good, then if it's not in high res 8K definition,
Right.
it's not being disqualified. And let's face it,
Yeah. It's
there
it's
wouldn't.
your phone at at your house. One AMC. Another one is Friday Night with the Morgans. Have you got to see any of that? Yeah, that's just in their house, and they're talking about farming and what they're doing while they're stuck inside. It's brilliant.
Well, and John Krasinski has now he decided he wanted to do a talk show called Just Good News, and it's become
Cool.
extremely popular. And he's filming it out of his house. He just had this idea to do this, and it's become extremely popular. But again, it's that DIY aesthetic that's really it's really panning out for a lot of people because they're willing to do this. And I mean, Saturday Night Live is still putting shows out because they're able to do skits from their homes. And I mean that pans out and works. And of course, late night television, it's all being done from people's homes at this point. So, um, going back to this idea that being able to take what you have and make something out of it. I mean, let's face it, if it wasn't for YouTube and a lot of creators who have been able to put out content, without having movie cameras, doing stuff from their phone, is really given permission to, big media to do the same. And they would just be out of luck and not really able to do anything if they didn't have that out there to be able to rely on. And I mean, that's again, it's the young geeks, those of us who been willing to experiment with form and just go out there and put stuff out. Kind of in a sense has really paved the way for a lot of people who wouldn't have where money would not have gotten you where you needed to go. Being willing to step back from it, going back again to Hollywood, being able to take the resources that you have and make something good out of it, But I mean that opportunity is definitely out there, and we're really, fortunately, we have that ability now, and that people are willing to do that, to take kind of a step back and put something out there and make something people will enjoy. I mean, that's the premium at this point, is having the ability to do that. So, but again, for the most part, we're just we're sitting in our homes, and we're just looking forward to eventually getting to see Black Widow, and Wonder
Mhm.
Woman,
Or
and
parking lots.
or
Sitting
yeah,
in parking
sitting in
lots.
parking lots, getting that phone signal. So, but we're, like I said, we're definitely hanging in, and there's at this point, there's really there's no end game to any of this. We don't know how much longer all this is going to go on, but the only thing we can do is hang in there and enjoy the things that we enjoy doing in the ways that right now we are able to, and looking forward to the future, whatever that holds, for sure. So, but I do have to ask you real quick before we go. Anything geeky that you're enjoying right now that over our extended vacation, shall we say?
Not particularly. I finished the second Witcher book. I really enjoyed that. So that was fun. I'm excited to see it in the next season because the first season was like 2 or 3 books mixed together, and I know that this book they have to put it in the next season because it goes with the what's happening next. So I'm excited to see the adaptation of it.
Well, the one thing I'm looking at right now is, of course, and we talked about this on the podcast. I was a backer of the new version of Fiasco that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they're putting stuff together so that you can play it online at roll20.com. And so and that's available for people who have backed the new version. Is that they have they're getting codes for the Roll20, and I'm working on getting getting the code and getting set up, and I'm hoping, maybe some weekend, getting some maybe we can get some of our friends together and try out the new Fiasco online. So, of course, haven't had a chance to game with anybody in forever, and so I've been missing that. That might be something worth doing down the road. But I will definitely let you know when I, maybe, like I said, we can get, you and me, Kevin, possibly Tara, maybe a couple other people online, and we can try out the new Fiasco, which would be pretty cool. So I will definitely let you know about that. So, but with all of that said, we have come to the end of episode 107 of the Geek Watch podcast. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. From Mandy Petrie, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the geek watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.